Some challenges that you're going to see in Singapore. The Singapore market is very competitive. It's well developed, it's really competitive, and it's still price sensitive. So don't forget about that. I'm going to go back to the premium products. Like I said, Singaporeans are absolutely willing to pay for a premium product. If you are producing, for example, a premium peanut butter, uh, there might also be two or three other premium peanut butters. Say, there's a premium peanut butter from Australia and it's, 75 cents less than yours. There's somebody's probably going to buy the 75 cents less one, right? So it's really important that you are looking at the other prices, what other premium products are on the market, and you're either identifying why yours is 75% or 75 cents more, why that's important and how yours is more premium, or you're lowering your price to be competitive. So it's very sensitive, and you need to know what's on the market and really do your research there. Strengths. The most important things, U.S. food and agricultural products, we're really enjoying the status of being trusted as a high quality products in Singapore. So that's something we already have and we can enjoy. It's not being challenged at all. And top US brands are already popular and they're in strong demand. On the weaknesses side, what we see quite a bit in Singapore is that a lot of US exporters are unfamiliar with this market. They're new to the market, and what happens is sometimes they're not able to meet the specific demands or requirements of the Singaporean market. So, an example of this I often use is with ice cream. So, in the United States, we love ice cream and we eat ice cream in really big amounts. Even if I go and buy Ben and Jerry's, I don't just buy 1 pint, right? I buy 3 pints, and I would just get those for myself, not even my family. Or we buy the big, the big size, or even like the really big family size. And that's because I have a pretty big freezer. I've maybe got a freezer in the garage, and there's plenty of space. That's not the case in Singapore, right? So families live in much smaller size apartments or houses, and in general, it's just they might not eat an entire huge bowl like I would, later in the evening. They might have just like a small scoop of that. So the requirements they're going to ask for are very different than what we would particularly, produce in the state. So if you're an ice cream producer, you need to be able to meet what the requirements are here in Singapore. It's not exactly the same. And if you aren't, open to changing what your specific, container sizes or the requirements of the needs are in Singapore, it maybe isn't the best market for you. So think about some of those things, and also just kind of order sizes. If you are looking at some of the restaurants, um, another example I'm going to give is scallops. We have, often exporters want to sell these huge amounts. Well, restaurants can't sell that. So they might be wanting smaller sizes. So again, be thinking about um, being able to meet the needs of the importers. And if that's, one of the recommendations we often have is look for consolidators, because that's a good way to get into the market here. The other thing I want to mention under weaknesses is time commitment for brand building can be really significant here. And this is tied to the competitiveness of the market. So say you've got that premium peanut butter and it's got a really unique story, some really unique flavors behind it. Uh, and you ask us, is this a good product for the market? We might say, yeah, this is actually really good. But that doesn't mean that you can instantly come in and sell it. You really need to come in, educate, do your research, who are the other premium, and spend time building the brand, and finding ways to educate the consumers and really finding um, the particular areas in Singapore where you can sell, because it could probably be really successful, but it takes time, and it is um, an investment in your brand in the market here. Sector trends. Um, Retail foods is a little bit interesting in Singapore. There are really only three key players, and it's NTUC Fair Price, which is essentially the government-owned, well, not government-owned, government-run retail or grocery chain in the country. So this is the largest one. They pretty much dominate the market. They have, anything from a number of hypermarkets all the way down to small, local shops, and then everything in between, sort of like the bougier side of, kind of maybe a Whole Foods or something like that, and everything in between. So this is really where you'd want to be. You want to make sure that you're selling in this at fair price. There's also Dairy Farm, which is kind of the second big one, and they also have a wide range of shops. And then Shengxiang, which is kind of the third retail chain. Those are the players. To be successful, you really need to be selling in these. Food processing, it's so small, it's such a tiny country. There just isn't a lot of space for this. And so we don't have a lot of manufacturing in Singapore. If you have food ingredients, this is unlikely to be a great market for you. The service side, this is a really, really strong service sector. We don't have the final numbers yet, I think from 2023, but we think this is about 16 billion in sales last year. So, and that's expected to increase. A really strong market, highly developed, really competitive, but great place to be. Distribution. So it looks pretty simple and it is pretty straightforward. We recommend working closely with an importer. Do your research about importers. Make sure that you're working with somebody really good who knows what they're doing. Um, and they can help get you into these retail channels that we just talked about. Current trends. So, since the pandemic, I think we've always, have been sort of using these phrases and sayings, kind of like we're, getting back to normal or we're on the path to recovery. And the fact is, things have changed, and we're sort of stopped talking in those phrases because things are different now, and they're not going back. It's not sort of a recovery trend anymore. It's not getting back to normal. Things are just different, and we're looking at the patterns that we're seeing now. Um, a few of those things include health and wellness patterns. Consistently, consumers are buying health and wellness, and that's where they're spending their money. It's really been a consistent trend since the pandemic, and it hasn't changed. So if you've got products, maybe that are tied into that somehow, or if you want to market your product in that way, that's something you would want to focus on in Singapore. Increased digitalization. This is really key in Singapore, especially. Online shopping is really growing, and even the live e-commerce and live streaming are still popular after the pandemic. If you're not popular, or if you're not familiar with these, you might want to look into it. It's they're really, really popular in Singapore. They're sort of these online, and in the States, you might be familiar with them in a more like fashion sense. They're really common on Facebook where you do sort of a live streaming, I have this shirt or this dress. But in Singapore, they actually do it with food, and even the retail spaces will use them to sell the grocery items, and they're still really popular even after the pandemic. Home shopping has ended, so something to consider. One last, I'm going to just mention this plant food. So there was a huge boom in plant-based foods. And I'm sure if you're from California, you are familiar with all of plant-based foods. This was a really big trend in Singapore, and it had been growing and growing and growing. And right now we're starting to see that maybe that is plateauing a little bit. So if that's a business that you're in, you may want to think about if you're coming into Singapore, that is kind of competitive, and it would be a very price sensitive area to be in. The market entry roadmap. So I'm going to take a moment and kind of go through these. Regulatory compliance, very key. Singapore food laws, everything needs to be in order. So your packaging, your labeling requirements, We put out a report every year with that kind of goes over these things in detail. So it's called our fairs report. It's available online. It's publicly available. You don't need to pay for this. If you're part of WUSADA, of course, they're gonna, put you in touch with this, and we can always, put you in the right direction. But really, you can just Google it online, fairs Singapore. You'll find it. Um, Market research, make sure that you're doing this, especially important for Singapore. Make sure that you're looking into price competitiveness. Is your product a good fit for Singapore? Um, Absolutely do your market research. Exporter assistance, work with your SRTGs. Your SRTGs are WUSADA, and the other groups. We are not separate entities. We work together. We're working together to help our exporters. We want you to be successful in the market. So please, please reach out to them because they know what they're doing. They're experts in this and they absolutely are going to be able to help you enter markets. Due diligence. Select your importers and your distributors carefully. Make sure that you're doing background checks to avoid any conflicts and financial disputes, because these are really going to be the agents who are going to help you on the ground in the market. So you need to be working with them very, very carefully. And develop links. Link with importers that target those major retailers in Singapore, because that's your key. You need to be in those major retailers. There are some other smaller, outfits and kind of like little specialty shops, and those are great too. You can absolutely be successful in those, but the big markets are where you're going to be able to have some success. And market promotion. So this is where, I'm going to just quickly talk about the trade shows. Food Hotel Asia, specifically in Singapore, it's the largest food and beverage trade show in all of Asia. It's huge, and it's a great opportunity to, it's a one-stop shop. So you can have, all the buyers, all the sellers. It's also an opportunity. This show is endorsed by the USDA. So from our perspective, what that means is you have more support from our office. Not only are we just there, so you have additional support from us, you'll also have the state regional trade groups like WUSADA who are there helping you. So you have a little bit more support. We put on some kind of side projects. So that means, another market briefing on the ground like this. We also do some retail tours. So we're going to have an opportunity to kind of go to some of those shops with a tour guide from the retail side and with us to ask more questions. And we do receptions. So you can come to the reception. You might want to bring, a buyer that you met or something like that. So there's just a little bit more support from the USDA side. And in general, they're a really good place because you'll get a lot more from the USA Pavilion. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be going to other trade shows too. If there's something else that is more convenient, that works with your schedule, that you find more specific to your product, go out. Trade shows are great. This is, we really encourage people because it's an excellent way to check out what's out there, who's out there, and to get familiar with, marketing your product in one place. So big fan of trade shows. Make sure you're going to them. And then, the other thing we have in here is digital marketing, another great way to get your product, in front of people's eyes.
Karen, we do
So
have a
that's just
question in the
Singapore. Yeah,
chat.
sure. Yeah, please.
How do we identify importers and get contact information?
How do you identify importers? So great question. It's kind of through this whole process, right? So we really want you to partner with if you have a small product, it kind of depends. I don't know what your product is. If you have a consumer-oriented product, we really encourage you, and you're new to market, we would really encourage you to work with your SRTGs. They are the best way to get into a new market.
Okay, and it looks like Mark responded that he's in California wines.
California wines, great. So a couple options. One, you can work with your SRTG. Two, the other great one is to work with the cooperators. So the cooperator, another one is the California Wine Institute. So that would probably be the best one for a wine exporter. If you're going to do it on your own, it's a lot more difficult. I would really encourage you to work with our group. So the way that the USDA works is that we have our offices overseas, but we're too small to do all of the marketing assistance for every group. And so what we do is we provide support in the way of these huge grants, and the grants go out to groups like the state regional trade groups and other, we call them cooperators. Essentially, they're grantees, right? And so California Wines is another big one. And what they do is they help groups, companies, etc., market their products overseas. And they will help you get connected with buyers in markets that you're interested in. And in a lot of cases, they know more specifics than we do. Um, and the second thing is, if you want to participate in, you can connect with them and say, hey, we want to participate in, um, a state and regional trade group. They might recommend Food Hotel Asia. Come to Food Hotel Asia. Let us know that you're coming, and we can bring people to you. We'll have, so that's another way that you can do it. Um, that's the best way. And I want to stop for a second. I want to ask Rowena and Alice, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, to add to Karen advice. So for Singapore, we do not recommend cold calling, that is knocking on the doors of the importers, because they always are very suspicious of, and they may not even respond to you. So like Karen said, the best way is to partner with an industry group, and because they then have the specific programs to enter each different market. Yeah, that's all.
Thanks, Alice. Rowena, do you have anything to add?
Hi, everybody. Just to add on to Karen and Alice advice as well, when you are actually at FHA, what we can help to support also is usually what we'll do is we go around and meet as much people to understand your product. For Malaysian importers, they will usually be around. I'll try to capture them and try to get appointments for some of the products that they're interested in. So that's one of the ways. So if you can share or just drop your brochure, if we don't have the time to get over to you, that always is helpful. Then we can understand a bit more. But there will be Malaysian importers and hoteliers that will be moving around. And you will see there'll be a lot of people during the trade event. So what we'll do to try to support is we have a hospitality booth there that we can help to arrange appointments and meetings for you all. So if you need that assistance, we're there to assist you at the hospitality booth as well. That's all I have.
Thank you.
By the way, this is Jack Huang with Cowboy Foods. I'm our exporter in California. Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Yeah, we are exporter of tree nut, like pecan, almond, pistachio, walnuts, things like that. But we export raw material, so it looks like Singapore is more a consumer-oriented market, and so it may not be a good fit for us. So are there any opportunity for like exporter like us, exporting in volume? Usually we export in container load. And so, we are planning our private label, working on that, not quite there yet. So, so how do we adjust and how do we get started? And also, there's a partner showing here, SRTG. Who is that, SRTG?
Okay, great questions. So let me first start with your SRTG question. So Wusada, and actually they're going to give a quick presentation today. So I'm going to let him answer that question for you. So you're going to get that answered later on. Yeah. Because are you in California?
Yeah, I'm in California. Actually, I'm planning to go
Okay,
to
great.
India this month and then Malaysia and Singapore in June. So I'm interested in understanding these two markets. And so, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I think, I believe Thomas is going to talk in a little bit. So you're going to hear from Musada, who will be able to answer that question for you better than I can, for sure. And then the second thing is, so it sounds like you've got tree nuts. Probably on the processing side, it's very limited in Singapore. Not that it's impossible. There are some things, but it is pretty limited. Having said that, I'm about to give you a quick presentation of Malaysia, which is the complete opposite. And secondly, in the services sector, there is room for tree nuts. So if that's an area that you're interested in, I do think there's probably some opportunities for tree nuts. And I don't know, so I would say that's probably the primary is services.
Karen, may I jump in? This is Russell.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Jack, and I also wanted to point out to everybody on the phone or on the call as well. By the way, let me introduce myself. My name is Russell Hood. I'm with Oak Overseas. I'm the U.S. and Canadian representative for the Food and Wholesale Asia Show. I have been working with this show since 2006, 2008, and I've been organizing shows on behalf of USDA since 2006, and going back as far as Seattle, Paris, 1998. So I've been around the block quite a bit. And what I want to point out also, I know everybody on the call may or may not be going to the FHA trade show, but Jack, you had mentioned that you're going to India as well as Singapore in June. If you can change your trip or modify in some way and come to the show, I think it would be very good for you to see the other exhibitors that are at the show and see your competitors. Because just because they're in Singapore does not mean they're focusing on Singapore. The show that we're talking, and the reason I'll circle around to why I'm saying this, because Karen wants to talk about Malaysia, which I absolutely agree, because each market is not created equal in the Southeast Asian market. This show is bringing over 100 countries of buyers to the show. This is a regional show. It takes place in Singapore.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
Similar to let's say, for example, U.S. honey, I don't believe can be sold in France, but they can come to the show and sell the honey to other markets that come to the show looking for honey. So that being said, come to Singapore, identify the other markets that are available to the products that you provide from a processing standpoint, from a retail standpoint, hospitality standpoint, whatever it might be. And then, of course, you can use that as a means to target those specific markets, in addition, of course, to the information you're going to get through Karen or all the respective offices throughout the USDA, throughout Southeast Asia, as well as from Hayden and from USADA. All I'm saying is that for those that are on the call, when it comes to trade shows, especially when it comes to FHA, it is the largest and longest standing show in the region. So if you're going to invest your marketing dollars, once you know specifically where you're going to go into Asia, Singapore offers new to market companies a great opportunity to ferret out those markets, the buyers, find distributors, things of that nature, before you go spend your dollars on Vietnam versus Malaysia versus Thailand or whatever not. Because, like, for example, Karen brought up the interest in spending on wellness. I can tell you Thailand, for example, if you have a high-end product, go to Thailand. They will spend their last dollar on the best product that they know that they can turn around and give to their kids. So, depending on your products, depending on the market, will depend on where you would want to focus your time. But Singapore will allow you, from a show standpoint, will allow you an opportunity to springboard and see those various different markets in one location and see your competitors and see what they're offering in the market as well.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for the suggestion. I think that's a great show to go. And by the way, what's the name of the show? Is that the Hotel and Food Trade Show?
It's Food Hotel Asia.
Oh, Food Hotel Asia. Okay, yeah. Okay, we
Yeah.
don't have our retail product yet, but I was thinking to set up some kind of distribution center, a packaging center. We ship container load of product over there, and we set up some kind of facility over there, and then we package our own product. And so that way we can, turn out our retail product and distribute from either Singapore or Malaysia. I don't know if that a good idea to do or something that you think is feasible? I haven't done
Well,
much
let's-
analysis yet. Yeah.
Let's hold off
everybody
and
just-
let's hold off
I'm
and
sorry,
chat at
Karen.
the end, because I do want to, I was just gonna say, let's hold off and chat a little bit. I would, yeah, I thank you, Russell, because I do think those are really good points, and I would also recommend coming to the show. I think it's a really good place to be, to see what's going on. But let's hold on and chat at the end, because I
Okay,
think
great.
we can talk a little bit more, but I do want to make sure that we cover Malaysia for everyone, including yourself, because I think
Wonderful.
there's
Thank you.
Okay, so Malaysia. Now you can see the skyline. Equally beautiful. Petronas Towers. A little bit different, much bigger. 33.7 million people here. GDP is 407 billion. Per capita is 13,000. That's a 2022 number, so we're still waiting on the 2023 number to come out. But there's a pretty large middle class in Malaysia, which also has pretty good spending power here for food. So it's a positive sign here in Malaysia, and a generally urban middle class generally. And I should have said too, there's one thing that's not on that slide, and that is that it's a really diverse population here. So it's primarily Malay Muslim, but there's also a really large Chinese heritage and Indian heritage here. So really diverse, in addition to a lot of, expatriates living here from all over the world again. So something to think about when you're marketing your products. Malaysia. So again, here's the map. I want people to see Malaysia because it is, I think not everyone in the United States knows what Malaysia looks like. And there's actually two parts of Malaysia: West Malaysia, which is the peninsular side, and then you have the east side of Malaysia, which is two different states, and they are on the island of Borneo. And there is, some differences between these sides. And the peninsular side is kind of where Kuala Lumpur is. It's next to Singapore, kind of the more urban side, but there is a lot happening in East Malaysia, so don't count them out. And overall, total ag market here is 24 billion. It's really large, much bigger than Singapore. Obviously, it's not just the consumer related or consumer oriented products. Top ag products coming into Malaysia. Soybeans are number one. This is primarily for feed, but there is some going into food production here as well. Again, you'll see the dairy products, food preparations. Again, a lot of this goes into the service industry, but not entirely here in Malaysia. I'm going to point out the tree nuts are number 5. So this is an area that is going well in Malaysia. Definitely on the promising end. So please think about tree nuts for Malaysia. This is a good area to be in. Consumer-oriented agricultural products. So this is total 9.7 billion. So we're doing well here, about 5% of the market share. Again, you'll see the same competitors. So Australia, New Zealand, the same regional kind of competition that we have, again, the same issues, logistics, right? Opportunities and challenges for US exporters. Opportunities, generally, Malaysia has a pretty well-established market in this really modern distribution channels, so not a lot to worry about there. Really open trade policies and pretty low to zero tariffs. We don't have a free trade agreement here. We do in Singapore, but not here. So you will need to kind of look up the tariffs, but generally across the board, they're very, very low. One thing here that I want to know or point out in terms of opportunities that we're really focusing on, and this has kind of popped up in the last few years, is that Malaysia is focusing on expanding food manufacturing really significantly, and the government is pushing this, they're behind it and backing it. So already they have an established food manufacturing sector here. The companies and facilities that are already existing are looking to expand. And there are also new facilities, new companies is being established as we speak. So that's a great opportunity. You know, I'm going to use your tree nut example for ingredients that are looking to enter the market. This is a great opportunity for any food companies that are ingredient based. And then one other opportunity, you know, I talked about the diversity here. There's a large number of like US style, Western style restaurants. There's a lot, I mean, the cafe culture here is huge, but there's also just a really diverse restaurants, you know, things that are really restaurant styles that are really high end, all the way down to hawker style. So a lot of opportunities within the service sector. And then on the other side, challenges, of course, we need to talk about halal. Halal certification can be required, or it can sort of be, it's not voluntary. I don't want to use the word voluntary because it sounds like it's, well, yes or no, but the truth is you might have to have halal certification. It is essentially in the manufacturing sector and or in the service sector. So primarily almost all restaurants are going to be, if they're serving, it's just easier for them to be halal certified. So if you're going to want to have your food in the service sector, the likelihood is they're going to ask you to be halal certified. And the same goes for manufacturing. So if there are a lot of those manufacturing opportunities that I'm talking about, they're going to want their products to be halal certified. And that's because they are trying to sell these products to well, domestically in Malaysia, but then also in the regionally, which include other Muslim countries. And this is great because there's a lot of Muslim populations looking for certified halal foods. Having said that, if you're not halal certified yet, it's something that you want to consider. And it can take some investment and time to become halal certified. But once you are, Malaysia is a really great place to become halal certified because it's recognized by quite a few other countries. Other challenges, there are some regulatory barriers here for certain products. That includes meat, alcohol, dairy. Generally, this doesn't mean that, you know, it's a no that you can't come here, but it does mean that you need to be really careful about compliance, that you need to work with us really carefully on making sure that everything is filled out correctly and done in the way that it needs to be done so that there's no mistakes. I won't go into any more details, but if you have questions, please feel free to ask. Sector trends. Retail food in Malaysia is a really interesting and dynamic space. Malaysia has kind of moved away from those big hypermarkets like Walmart or something, and that was kind of during the pandemic. People lost favor. They didn't want to go into these big markets, right? That wasn't kind of safe. And what happened is that those started to close or break apart and become these smaller shops. Excuse me. And as they did that, what started popping up in neighborhoods were smaller retail stores and kind of on the bougier end, you know, or these high-end premium grocery stores that were convenient for people so they could just pop out of their houses, you know, and go into the shops. And as the pandemic sort of slowed down and people are now kind of back out, they're going to work, it is more convenient for them, right? They can just go home, stop by these shops. And the retail spaces that we've seen are also they will have maybe a cafe, they'll sell really unique products, they are somewhere kind of more community based, and they're really interesting places and they have really cool foods. And so anyway, it's a place that you might, if you have retail foods, this is a cool place to be. If you have a unique product, this is something that you might be interested in. Food processing, I just kind of talked about the expansion of food processing in Malaysia. If you have an ingredient, we really want you to think about Malaysia because this is a new area, it's growing. We'd love to take advantage of this opportunity. And again, think about becoming halal certified. But we definitely are seeing a lot of opportunities in this area. The service side, the service sector. Malaysia's service sector is really strong. It had really huge growth in 2023, and we expect that to not be as fast. I think a lot of that came from the end of sort of the pandemic years, but what we're seeing now is still kind of a steady growth. People are back out, they're eating out, they're still kind of being careful about their spending, but people are back out and spending money in the service sector. These are the halal certification bodies in the United States. We have 3 of them. And, you know, if you want to take a snapshot quick, that's fine. We can also send these out for you. They're also available in our GAIN reports. We have a GAIN report just on halal certification. So you can always find that information out there. But there's only 3 that are available in the United States. Current trends, I'm just going to quickly kind of hop on a few of these. So again, e-commerce place, this is here to stay. People really like e-commerce. It's not going anywhere. Even, you know, the groceries being delivered online, everybody does that. Another unique one with Malaysia is the phone payment. People pay with their phones. There's times if you go to buy food at like a, you know, sort of a food truck, they'll only accept phone payments. So if you don't have it, you can't buy food. They don't accept cash. They don't accept credit card. So that's a really popular thing right now in Malaysia. And then again, I want to highlight the health and wellness. This is a consistent trend. Consumers are spending money for health and wellness. And that's something you really want to keep in mind with your products. And I will also add to that, in Malaysia, halal is a part of that. Roadmap for market entry. I'm not going to go through this again because it's pretty similar to, or essentially the same as Singapore, but I want to highlight the regulatory compliance piece here, because in Malaysia, when we have problems, they are because we see exporters making mistakes on their forms for entry. So that means the packaging, the labeling, the export requirement documents, there might be a missing date, something was missed, something was spelled wrong. The forms need to be filled out perfectly. You really need to take time if you're exporting to Malaysia. And I'm saying this on behalf of Rowena because I know that when these things happen, they can cause you months of delay. And we're going to help you. Rowena's going to help you. But what I think she'd prefer doing is to be spending time out in the market, marketing your products and getting them sold, rather than, you know, fixing shipping delays and getting things out of the port. So please, please, please make sure, take an extra minute or 2, double check that forms are filled out correctly. The distribution channels for imported food ingredients here, or retail foods, these are pretty much the same that you see in Singapore. I again want to highlight that the agents or the importers are really important. This is the person on the ground who is going to help you, and they're going to advise you on how to get to the right distributors or how to get to the retailers. And so make sure that you do your due diligence to find the right agent or importer. These are other regulatory compliance highlights, a whole bunch of specific things. And of course, this is all in our reporting. So if you need any more assistance or guidance on specifics, this is all there. I'm not going to go through it because it's really detailed, but important things if you're looking to come into Malaysia, these are kind of the detailed regulatory compliance that you need to be aware of. So I think that's the quick Malaysia overview. any questions on Malaysia or any other questions, in general that you've thought of that you want to talk about, anybody? Okay, and then I also want to just give an opportunity, Alice, Rowena, anything to add to Singapore or Malaysia?
And Karen, there is one question in the chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
It says, isn't Singapore a city in Malaysia? So isn't it all subject to halal certification?
So actually, no, Singapore is its own country. Singapore is a city-state country, so it's a separate country. And no, but it's a great question about halal in Singapore. Singapore has its own halal standards. Singapore is primarily Chinese heritage, so halal is not as it's not as important in Singapore. But what I would say is that if you have halal certification from Malaysia or Singapore, I would recommend getting it in Malaysia. It's just an added bonus in Singapore because you will be able to enter. There's certain hotels that are halal. There's certain restaurants that are halal. So in general, I would say it adds like a 10% bonus on to anything you're doing in Singapore if you have halal certification, because there are a lot of Malaysians that come to visit Singapore. There are a lot of Indonesians that come to visit Singapore. There's a lot of people from Brunei that come to visit. There's a lot of Muslim visitors who want halal, and you're going to have this added benefit of being able to sell your products in those sectors. So I would say it's a great opportunity to just have an added bonus.
This is Jack again. I got a quick question. I think you provide a lot of very useful information. Not only do you provide the cursor point, but also provide a lot of detailed information. I'm very impressed with your knowledge in both markets. So I just wanted to know, how is the U.S. agricultural product doing in Malaysia? What is people's perception of U.S. product over there? So do the U.S. product go in like a raw material or the finished product in a retail package, or how do they come into Malaysia?
That's a really good question. And the general answer is it comes in a lot of different ways. But actually, Rowena, would you want to take this one? Maybe add a little bit variety to my answers?
Sure. So just to add on to Karen, that's correct. Like Karen have mentioned, Jack, that it actually comes in various forms depending on what product you are bringing in for yourself. Tree nuts can come in more to bulk purchases. Some of the importers might repack them and have them in their stores. So it depends where it's going. So it depends on products as well. But if you're asking about tree nuts, then I can share with you that most of the tree nuts that come into Malaysia can either go to manufacturers. So that would definitely be bulk. So the manufacturers will use them to manufacture something, reprocess them, and then it goes out to the market, either in Malaysia or into the global halal market. Hence, that's why Karen was emphasizing on halal. For Mark, who was asking about halal certification, because Malaysia is 60% Muslim population. So if you have halal certification, you get 100% market access, basically. And it's important to know that in Malaysia, all the chain food outlets, food service outlets, if they want to cater for the whole market, they are halal certified, meaning that every single product that goes into a halal certified outlet, hotel, or venue in Malaysia needs to be halal certified. It's not only confined or limited to meat product, which is usually the understanding by a lot of our American exporters, but it could be simple little things like your frozen berries. Those need to be halal certified as well. I hope that answers your question. But in terms of tree nuts, most of them come in bulk. It can be repackaged, but if you already have a brand, like we do have some brands from United States that already have a brand, those go into smaller package, retail package that goes into the stores. But from understanding from your little chat earlier with Karen, it seems like you might be doing more of bulk tree nuts. And we do have repacker here in Malaysia. If you can find and work with an importer, they usually have a repacker. They can repack here. They can even repack. We have talked with a few of the tree nuts importer. They were even exploring to repack here in Malaysia and then re-export them out. Maybe they might value add it to add in some flavors or spices to repack and then export it out to the global market as well. Yeah. Hope that answers your question.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think you're very helpful.
Great.
You're
Yeah, you've got
welcome.
to come back
And
to Malaysia. Yeah.
yeah, you got to come back to Malaysia and
Yeah.
Jack, just to highlight from what Russell mentioned, FHA is definitely one of a good exhibition to enter because we do have a lot of Malaysian importers that goes around, including tree nuts.
Oh,
So if
wonderful.
you
Yeah.
are participating, please let me know. Sometimes I will reach out to all our importers and see they're going, and they usually will drop by in the hospitality booth just to say hi, so I can catch up
Wow.
with them. And
Yeah,
sometimes
wonderful.
if the schedule is too tight, we do some follow-up for our participants and exhibitors that actually participate in FHA. So if you do have a
Mhm.
chance and if you're deciding on spending your money in terms of marketing dollars into the region, I would also agree with Russell. FHA is one of those to go. It gives you a good insight, and we can always chat more when you're in town.
Oh, wonderful. How do I?
I know we're going to move on, and I definitely want you to hear from Russell because he will talk a little bit more about, and I also want you to hear from Usada. So I'll turn it back over.
Mhm.
Okay, we have Russell Hood up next. He's with Oak Overseas, and he's the president of that company, and he will give a little background. I think he already gave a little bit of background, so I'll let him go ahead and complete his presentation now.
Well, I don't know how much you want to know. In essence, again, we manage the U.S. Pavilion at FHA. Of course, we do that in collaboration with the USDA FAS, along with Karen and Alice Queck, who manages that market. And again, we've been around for quite some time, Alice and I, managing this show in the market. Alice, a little bit longer than me, I would say, wouldn't you, Alice? That being said, though, I did want to, Karen, I was about to allude earlier, and I didn't mean to hijack the conversation. But I remember Jim Ditmore from I think it was New Mexico, Pecans, if I'm correct. He basically was selling container after container after container. I was almost about to put a bar chart in his booth so he could scribble in how many containers he sold during the show. Now, to whom he sold, I couldn't tell you. I don't know if they were from Malaysia, from Vietnam, or whatnot, but the man just basically packed a suitcase and went home. And he saw that also in Hong Kong. He saw it in other markets that we did with him. But as far as Food and Hotel Asia is concerned, again, just to recap that, it is the longest standing show in the region. It is plus 50 years, again, over 100-something visitors, over 2,000 exhibitors. The U.S. Pavilion typically is one of the largest next to, we usually compete with Australia as far as the pavilion is concerned. We have a good swath of companies that come. Hayden can also talk about as well because as it is a USDA endorsed show, we do have WSADA participating, CESA participates, as well as a variety of other associations like the California Olive Council and a variety of others, the U.S. Dairy Council and other groups. So depending on what your products are, depending on what your focuses are, there may be opportunities for you to participate at the show through those organizations. And I'm not necessarily talking about this edition, although there is space available. But the show is now annual. It used to be biannual, so you can now come every year. And this show is also a chain of a lot of shows. Food and Hotel Asia is the flagship show of a series of shows throughout Southeast Asia and China that we represent, and that have been around again for very, very long. And that includes Malaysia. We have a Food and Hotel Malaysia show, which is actually developing stronger and stronger as years go by, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, Korea. So there are a lot of different shows that, again, if ever anybody here wishes to reach out to me and talk about a show, feel free to do so. I have absolutely no problem talking about a market, even if it's a competing show. how to consider a show and how to approach the show. And even if you're exhibiting the show and want to know how to exhibit, let me know as well. Because there are things you need to take in consideration when you're going to exhibit about shipping your product over, how much sample you should use it, how you identify an importer or buyer or just a tire kicker, expectations, things of that nature, and that changes from market to market. And of course, Alice, Karen, Rowena, anybody else that has been in that market for the USDA are going to be absolute critical tools for you to not only interface with prior to the show, during the show, but absolutely after the show as well. I mean, I'm not going to tell you that they're going to work miracles, but they do. So in any case, I don't know exactly what you want me to say more about the show itself or whatnot, but I can take questions at the end or right now or however you'd like that to be.
We can go ahead and do questions now, and then we can move on to Hayden. So does anyone have questions for Russell?
This is Mark Harris. Can you hear me?
I sure
Yes.
can, Mark.
Again, we're H&H Wine Company. We're a large processing facility, and we have our own brands. I don't know if your organization has contacts with the ideal kinds of distributors we need to partner with, or if that I have to go back to the FAS or CITD or WSATA or whatnot.
Mark, a couple of things. I do recommend you jump on a plane and come out to the show. And the reason that is because
As an attendee or as an exhibitor?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As an attendee, come and do market research. That's what I was suggesting to Jack as well. Come and see all the different. I mean, you have 100+ countries. Excuse me, more than that are exhibiting at the show. So you can imagine the products are being brought. Second of all, Food and Hotel Asia partnered with ProWine several years ago, so we have sommelier challenges, et cetera. ProWine is one of the largest show organizers of wine events in the world, and they have teamed up with us at multiple of our events throughout Asia. And we also coordinate with WACS, the Worldwide Chef Society. They use our shows to produce all their culinary competitions and so forth. So you're going to have a tremendous number of people exhibiting at those shows that would be interested in your product. But first and foremost, the platform's there, but the people that are also there selling their wines are at the show. And that is a great opportunity to find out what they're doing. You can look at it from the question of labeling. The buyers are going to be there. I can't speak for Alice or for Karen or for Hayden. I can't speak for California Wine Institute, someone who I would definitely contact and find out more about how they access these markets. But there's plenty of research to be done there. And, I think with of course, the show's coming up here in less than a month. But maybe for next year, you could set up opportunities to have synergies
so
you're investing in going to the show.
You're partnered with ProWine for this show on April 23rd,
Yes,
2026? Oh.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm going to ProWine. I didn't know you guys were related or the same reason, the same event.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
Mark, you're coming to Singapore?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, why don't we talk when because we'll all be there. ProWine and Food Hotel Asia are at the same.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, if we don't have any other questions for Russell, we're going to go ahead and move on to Hayden Romig. So I apologize. And he's with WSATA, and he's going to give you a little bit of information on WSATA. Go ahead, take it over, Hayden.
All right, let me just switch things over here. Everyone got the not my presenter notes, I hope. It's just the PowerPoint slides, correct? Perfect. So I'm Hayden Romig. I'm with WSATA, and I'm one of our engagement executives with the organization. So I'm just going to try to do a quick 15, maybe 20-minute overview. There's a lot of information to cover. So I expect there's going to be questions, and I will make sure that I will get my email put out in the chat as well as maybe some other resources that have kind of come across throughout this webinar tonight. So getting to know WUSADA just kind of a little bit. Sorry, give me 1 second to adjust that setting. So, who are we? We are a nonprofit trade association who, we are backed by the USDA market access program. And what that market access program allows us to do is really turn around and help small to medium agribusinesses. So a lot of our global network partners, these resources include in-country trade representatives, the agricultural trade offices, and the agricultural marketing divisions from our member states. And I apologize, I'm fighting off my cat. She's been so good up until this point tonight. So a little bit about our mission and our vision. The big three things, and you can read that for what it is. The three things that we're going to really hit in my 15 minutes here is we're going to learn about the benefits of USADA, a lot of marketing research, definitely from our conversations tonight. And we want to connect. We want to connect through our Global Connect program with our international buyers that we do have these events with our project managers in our Western states. And lastly, we want to compete, right? We want to compete at that international scale, utilizing the USDA's MAP programs for cost reimbursements. So our members here, we are going to focus on the Western United States, as you can see right there. So we're closely linked with government agencies, although we are not the government agencies, although we work very close with our departments of ag from these states to work on trade activities, market research, assistance with overcoming trade barriers. That's one of the examples, just to kind of name a few. So there's a lot of different things that kind of go into it. So what are we kind of looking for when, how do you qualify for a WUSADA account, right? So if you go on the website, you're going to hit sign up for my WUSADA account. Are you headquartered in the Western United States? Are you a small to medium agribusiness? Are your products at least 50% grown in the United States? So we're talking farm, fished, really the ingredient part of it, making sure that that is a 50% ingredient. So about 90% of our participants in our program, they have about 10 employees or fewer. So we are really working hard with our programs to really gear that towards small businesses. So kind of jumping into that first pillar that I kind of mentioned, that's export readiness and really providing data and guidance throughout the markets, throughout our in-country partners and our in-country experts. They're the experts, right? And they work closely with our project managers in each of all these different states. And they're very knowledgeable and very insightful. And I know they've got great connections. But also with our market intelligence reporting, tailored marketing data. Jack, I'll circle back with you. This might be a good conversation that we can have. Obviously, we'll save it for after the call, but please, I'd like to get our contact information. This would be a great opportunity to kind of help with some of this market intelligence that we can share with your organization as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
So jumping into our Global Connect, and that right, so we are connecting with our international partners, our international buyers, importers, distributors. This is our non-branded program. So we are going to be working in conjunction with activities such as international trade shows. So these are just kind of a few of what examples of some international trade shows that are USDA approved, like what was mentioned before, annual or biannual shows. Our Global Connect program will generally purchase about 10 to 40 trade show booths per year within a larger USA pavilion or at these shows. So that way you kind of get the perks of maybe a lower registration price, interpreters that are around the WUSADA sponsored areas. You've got maybe some more coordinated one-on-one meetings with foreign buyers, so that so attending trade shows within within the USA pavilion that WUSADA is also at definitely has its perks and its upsides. Another opportunity that we do have through our Global Connect program is our inbound and outbound missions. So this is what's that term, speed dating, right? I think everyone really likes, everyone kind of understands what speed dating is. And this is an opportunity that each states, or maybe an individual state, partnering states, will host events. And this is basically, you're going to sit down and get your product on a table. We're going to have speed dating. Buyers are going to come through and, individually have that conversation. And some of these inbound missions can, include facility tours or special events to really, design that one-on-one connection and to establish that buyer supplier relationship. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm moving on. I didn't even mention the outbound missions. Outbound missions, similar thing, but instead of in the United States, we're not bringing. Let me back up. Inbound mission, WUSADA brings in foreign buyers to facilitate this. And in the outbound, it's the opposite, right? So we are going to be taking U.S. suppliers and heading out towards different countries, depending on what that trade mission is. I know that they go quite a bit of different places. Trade leads. This is a free service that WUSADA offers to its participants. It's a great way for trade leads that we get from suppliers that may come in through our system, right? And we pre-screen these to make sure that they're legitimate. And then from there, based on the HS codes, that might hit your My WUSADA account dashboard, which is going to indicate a trade lead. And maybe that somebody is going to be having some sort of interest in your products based on your HS codes that are in our system. So just another nice thing. So getting kind of into the fun match, right? So this is our reimbursement program. This is the USDA MAP program. And this is kind of the big one that I'm going to focus on probably more in the back half here, but kind of the same thing, right? We want to focus on small companies in accordance with the SBA guidelines. And so SBA is, it's kind of loose terms, right? With the amount of employees that may or may not be, but a small company, according to the SBA guidelines, could be up to 500 employees or less. So we know that there's probably a really good chance that we're still going to fall under that. But we always make sure that we're due diligent in doing so. A U.S. entity business, legally licensed and operating for a year. And lastly, again, that 50% grown in the United States by weight. So that's farmed, fished, forested. Kind of hit that already. So brand ownership, right? Sometimes your company may or may not own the brand. Do you have the permissions to export that brand, right? We always want to make sure we follow up and that you have the proper permissions for that as well. Clearly labeled as product of the USA, made in the USA. I think the next slide is going to get a little bit more detailed into that. But when we're talking about when companies go to file claims, when they get back from their events or whatever the case is, this is probably the number one thing where companies may slip up or trip up and may not get that reimbursement or that full up to 50% because there's some sort of origin statement that is missing. So kind of some examples of some of those U.S. origin statements. Obviously on the top four, you're going to see product of the USA or product of America. Whereas the bottom ones, we want to make sure that we're avoiding the pictures or the seals. It's very important to spell out the name of the USA or product of the United States of America. You want to spell out product of California, not product of CA, things like that. So, and as you know, in wine and spirits have a little bit of a specialty when it comes to this part of it, that they are allowed to say bottled by or produced in as an appropriate statement to that as well. So FundMatch provides a 50% cost reimbursement on eligible international marketing expenses. And I will get to eligible expenses in a sec, and there's a lot of them, and I won't take the time to do all of them, but there's a good amount. So what a first-year applicant can expect, first-time exporters can receive up to $25,000 in funding throughout our programs. Experienced exporters can receive up to $50,000. So from earlier on the slides, there's a $250 application fee to run the application, and then you probably noticed the 6% administration fee as well, and that's going to come off of the fund match. So if you're going to request, let's say $25,000 in federal funding, that 6% is about $1,500 that gets reduced from that amount. After that first year, starting that second year, you're more than welcome to go up to $300,000 in requests, and so there's really not I know that seems like a bit of a big jump, but we do work in our consultations to make sure that our marketing plans that we are setting out is going to make sense, right? We don't want someone to request $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 and they only spent 25% of it, and then they're out that 6% that they put into it, right? So we're going to make sure that we have those consultations and those talking points to make sure that the your marketing plan is going to match up with that allotment. All right, international expenses. So big list. I am not going to go through every single one of them. I will point out some, and I'll walk through some, but I will redirect you to the fund match guide that is on our website. I will put a link or a link in the chat, so that way you can go right to it and you can really start to dive in on what's eligible and what's ineligible. So I'm going to go backwards on that slide. So some of these international trade shows that that can be reimbursable would be the exhibition fees or the booth rental spaces, temporary labor wages, your freight shipping of your samples, the travel. I know I can probably speak for FSA and maybe some other people, but sometimes the travel can be a little bit difficult at some points to navigate, right? So always making sure that we're checking in with our WUSADA representatives, but airfare for two companies or for two company representatives, et cetera, et cetera. So printed sales materials, giveaways, there's so much information here, but let me backtrack. With our trade shows within a USA pavilion, like we mentioned earlier, this is what's preferable. Companies are required to exhibit within a USA pavilion to be able to be eligible for reimbursement costs. Excuse me, getting a little dry. If the trade show has no USA pavilion, your company is free to exhibit anywhere on the show floor as long as 30% or more exhibitors sell food or ag services. So I will follow that up with this next bullet point. Pre-approval is very, very, very important. So making sure that we get that pre-approval at least 60 days out, very important. And the same goes for wine tasting events as well. Pre-approval from the USDA is needed to conduct a wine tasting within the USA pavilions as well. So just kind of taking a glance at our 2024 calendar, these are kind of those trade shows that we've probably already mentioned and talked about a little bit tonight, but I really just wanted to focus on the bolded ones. And the bolded ones would be what we have coming up, or I guess some of them have already passed by, but these are the ones that we will be at from a WUSADA standpoint. So you'll be able to, get those cost reimbursements, those better deals through our organization, or take advantages of those services like I mentioned earlier with interpreters, foreign buyer meetings, et cetera, et cetera. So just an overview kind of what we all just kind of touched on going through the fund match. So you're going to start off having that fund match consultation with one of our members at WUSADA. That is you're going to go out and fill out the application, submit that $250 application fee. It is actually going to go right on to our fund match manager, Blaine, who's going to review the application, make sure everything is okay. There might be some adjustments. We go back and forth for a little bit just to make sure that everything's okay and everything is going to align with the MAP regulations. Sign that contract fee and sign the contract, 6% admin fee, and then we're free to move about those activities and that we have sat down and discussed with that marketing plan. come back, submit those claims throughout on our online portal, which is great. We're able to kind of get things done a little bit quicker throughout that online process. And it probably helps everyone else out a little bit more too. So then we are there to review the claims, additional documents if needed, and then that's when we are able to allocate up to 50% of those funds, to, depending on the claims. So I know I've talked about a lot, and I'm going to wrap up here. I've hit my 15 minutes, and I want to make sure we keep the night moving. But it's very important to speak with a WUSADA representative before maybe getting into going anywhere, or if you have any questions at all before we buy, flight tickets or anything like that, make sure you speak to someone at WUSADA. Just to make sure that we're doing everything right, because we want to make sure that everyone is getting their claim reimbursements, because that's not always a fun conversation to have, obviously, but we're here to help, and we want to make sure that we're doing it right, just to help you guys get out there and compete. So again, I will put the fund match guide, I'll put my email down in the chat a little bit here. That way, if anyone has any questions or thinks about anything after we get off the call, that's the way I always am. I always get a question after the fact. Feel free to email me, but you're more than welcome to reach out to the export@wusada.org. That will also hit us or me or some of our other engagement executives, and we'll get back to you on that one.
Okay. I know we're at 7, but does anyone have any quick questions for Hayden?
Hayden, this is Jack. I just got a quick question. In fact, I just submitted my application for the CL trade show in China a few days ago. WUSADA has been very, very helpful in the past, and you guys basically help us process all the claims and help us hand in hand, and so. One quick question though is so this time, if I'm not flying direct to Shanghai and I stop in Taiwan to meet with some customers, and then from Taipei and fly to Shanghai, would that be okay?
Actually, too. Hi, Jack. My name is Wade Byram. I'm with WUSADA as well. I'm just here learning a little bit of information on the Malaysian market. Yeah, you would definitely want to pull a quote to the trade show, but reach out to us. We'll walk you through the steps and everything that you need to do. You definitely will want to pull a quote for the time for the actual travel. Then you can book your own travel the way that you need to, but you'd only be reimbursed for the actual travel, not the stops in between.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. And also, how do we, it looks like WUSADA has more resources than I thought. And so, especially you have the intelligent database and things like that. And so how do we, utilize that?
Do you have an account on
Yeah, I do.
with WUSADA?
Cool.
Yeah. So how familiar are you with the dashboard then?
Relatively familiar.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
I haven't really utilized. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's okay. So what would be best probably is to let's set up a meeting after this.
Okay.
For a later time, and
wonderful.
That way I can consult with our Global Connect team too.
Awesome.
Those guys are pretty knowledgeable in the sense of Global Connect and the amount of resources. As well as, we can go over the marketing tools. We use Euromonitor for marketing access and data. And I think that would be a good meeting for us to have.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
And repeat the question, Jack.
Yeah, my question is, how do we find a legal expert or lawyer who specialize in international law?
Oh, that is a good
question.
Including,
international law, because usually one common scenario that we come across in international trade is the wage shortages, the variance, right? Sometimes we are over, sometimes we're short. And so, we export in bulk. And so we ship in bulk.
Are you looking, is this for China or for?
Yeah, for China.
Market?
Yeah, usually for China, Hong Kong, and Vietnam. And so we pack them in super sack, in a container, right? And so we usually we weigh them, individual bag. It's not a retail pack. It's accurate to the pound
Yeah.
or to the ounce. And so, when you export in bulk, so there's always a variant. And so, we always have an argument with our customer and say, hey, you're 200 pounds short, you're 200
Yeah,
pounds
yeah.
short. And so,
No, I
we
think
don't
this is
know.
pretty common in China.
Mhm.
So just to kind of a general answer, generally we can't recommend lawyers. Having
Mhm.
said that, if you contact, either I don't know what cities you're working in, but if you contact any of do you know how we have I think we put up, it's like Ag Kuala Lumpur. All of our embassies and consulates, our
Mhm.
offices for
Mhm.
agriculture around the world. So we have a public website. It
Yeah.
lists all of those emails addresses for our offices overseas. So you can go to that website and just pull up an email them, and they can connect you. What they can do is probably just list some of the available
Mhm.
because I think this is pretty common for China. I think there's quite a
Yeah.
few operating lawyers who help for food exports and do this kind of work. So they might be able to
Mhm.
provide you a list of the operating. They can't recommend
Mhm.
a lawyer to you. We're prohibited from doing that, but they can probably provide you a list of the lawyers that are operating in that space.
Okay, great. Thank you.